My best friend and I traveled to ancient times, both disguised as men, and became strategists for Rowan Ruan. When the plague broke out in the army, Rowan Ruan gathered his subordinates to discuss countermeasures. My lord, I propose using catapults to hurl the bodies of those who died from the plague into the enemy's city. Rowan Ruan's lips twitched, hesitating. Isn't this too? Before he could finish, my best friend stepped forward to object. Unacceptable. Another strategist named Arthur Hahn nodded and said, Indeed, this approach is too. My best friend continued, What if the enemy hurls the bodies back at us? My lord, I propose cutting the plague-ridden corpses into pieces, boiling them, and having an inside man sneak into the enemy's city to mix the meat into their army rations. That way, we can infect them without anyone knowing. Both Rowan Ruan and Arthur Hahn fell silent. It's been a long time since I've seen such pure evil. Later, as my friend and I were never given important roles, we defected to the enemy overnight. The next day, Rowan Ruan led his troops to attack the city, with Arthur Hahn standing by his side. They stood outside the city gates, Rowan Ruan gripping his spear, while Arthur Hahn aimed his repeating crossbow, both gritting their teeth and shouting in unison, Hand those two over. As long as they remain sheltered near camp for even a day, our army shall know no peace. My best friend and I hid inside the watchtower, munching on sunflower seeds as we listened to Rowan Ruan's shouts outside. I turned to Evan Chun beside me and said, My lord, in your servant's humble opinion, why not employ the strategy one proposed last night to strike down that scoundrel? Evan Chun chuckled at my words, watching me with amused interest as he asked, But wasn't he your former master? Why such ruthlessness? At the mention of this, my friend gritted her teeth in fury beside me, exclaiming, You don't know the whole story. My lord, that wretch Rowan Ruan not only failed to value our talents, but actually tried to have us killed. That's why we fled under cover of night to seek refuge with you. Oh, there's more to this tale. Evan Chun tilted his head, his phoenix eyes slanting toward me with a smile playing on his lips. Exactly, precisely. I nodded vigorously in agreement, vividly describing the scene to Evan Chun. That night, Brother Wei and I were just about to enter the villain's tent to offer our counsel, when outside we overheard him discussing with his guards when to eliminate us. Brother Wei was so heartbroken, he wept on the spot. Think of it, we joined that scoundrel's ranks, devised unorthodox strategies time and again, yet were never valued. And who could have imagined he wouldn't even leave us a way out? Our loyalty was misplaced, our devotion cast into the gutter. In utter despair, we came to seek refuge with you. My lord, unorthodox strategies time and again. Evan Chun pondered these words carefully, the corner of his mouth twitching as he recalled the scene when we first came to pledge allegiance. That night, Evan Chun sat in his chair, legs spread, propping his chin with one hand. He lazily lifted his eyes to look at my confidant and me kneeling before him, chuckled, and said, Interesting, Rowan Ruan strategist coming to pledge allegiance to me. His gaze swept over the two of us, as if recalling something amusing. A smirk tugged at his lips as he slowly spoke. Do either of you have any strategies to weaken the enemy's combat strength? Evan Chen's question was meant to test our sincerity, not truly expecting any useful tactics from us. After all, when it came to ruthless schemes, he had plenty of his own. My friend's eyes darted thoughtfully before she spoke up first. My lord, I can craft iron mines buried underground. These mines contain countless smaller iron pellets, concealed beneath a thin layer of soil on the battlefield. When enemy soldiers step on them, the mines will explode, scattering numerous pellets that injure several soldiers without killing them. Then, we simply lie in wait near the wounded, and when the enemy comes to retrieve their injured comrades, we can easily pick them off with arrows. After hearing this, Evan Shin fell into a brief silence. He thought he was already quite ruthless, but never expected Rowan Ruan's subordinate to be even more so. Unacceptable. Before Evan Shin could speak, I stood up and loudly refuted my friend. This plan is absolutely unacceptable. Upon hearing this, Evan Shin breathed a sigh of relief. just as he was about to nod in agreement, though noting that if this plan were used, he would likely be cursed by the world for 1,000 years. He heard me declare emphatically, resources are so scarce right now. Where would we even get the iron to forge iron mines? You're being utterly unrealistic. After saying this, I turned to Evan Shun, cupped my hands in salute, and said, "My lord, I believe it would be better to dip arrows in waste to attack the enemy. Even the slightest scratch would surely leave them beyond cure, their wounds festering, suppurating, until they perish." Evan Shin closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. Finally, he opened his eyes and stared at the tent ceiling, silent for a long while. He believed it. He believed these two beasts sincerely wished to surrender, and he understood why Juan wanted to get rid of these two nuisances. Such beasts, even one, would be a calamity to the world. Yet he actually had a pair of them. You're truly fortunate, Juan. As the memory faded, Evan Shin cast a complex glance at me and my best friend squatting on the ground, cracking melon seeds, then turned and ascended the city tower, gazing down at Juan, who was still shouting provocations from below. He bared his teeth in a chilling grin and raised his hand with a sharp command, "Fire the arrows." In an instant, tens of thousands of arrows tipped with exertled toward Juan and Arthur Han on the ground. When Juan realized what was smeared on the incoming arrows, he paled in horror, nearly losing his grip on his horse. He frantically ordered his soldiers to raise their shields, retreating while defending. Amid the retreat, he couldn't help but blurt out curses. "Evan Shen, how dare you resort to such a vile trick? Aren't you afraid of becoming the laughingstock of the realm?" Ha ha ha. Watching his arch-rival flee in disarray, his forces in utter disarray, Evan Shen laughed with immense satisfaction. "So what? Better that I betray the world than let the world betray me. Juan, these two strategists under your command are truly a pair of treasures." Ha ha ha. That night, Evan Shin celebrated his great victory by hosting a lavish banquet for the two of us. My best friend and I feasted until our mouths were glistening with grease. Truly, a tree dies when moved, but a person thrives when they change their circumstances. Following that scoundrel Juan, we starved 9 meals in 3 days. But on our second day with Boss Chun, we were already eating meat. Our decision to escape was undoubtedly the right one. That night, my friend and I ate until we were belching nonstop, nearly making ourselves sick from overindulgence. When the banquet was halfway through, I quietly slipped away and stealthily made my way into Evan Chen's room. My pledge of loyalty was a pretense. My true purpose was to search for an item here. Evan Chen was still outside drinking with his officers, so I had to find that object before he noticed my absence. I carefully rummaged through drawers and cabinets in his room when suddenly I heard footsteps approaching outside the door. My heart leaped in alarm. How had Evan Chen returned so soon? Panicked, I scrambled under the bed, holding my breath and staying perfectly still. I heard the soft creak of Evan Chen's door being gently pushed open, then saw a pair of blue cloth shoes appear before me, pacing back and forth in the room. Wait, were these the shoes Evan Chen was wearing? As I puzzled over this, I suddenly heard the person mutter to themselves, "Where on earth did that scoundrel Evan Chen hide it?" I fell silent. That voice, wasn't it my best friend? What is she searching for in here again? Just as I was about to crawl out from under the bed to confront her, faint footsteps echoed from outside the room. Startled, my friend panicked and scrambled headfirst under the bed. Our eyes met. I stared at my friend, she stared back at me, and we shared a wordless silence. From her expression, I clearly read the same confusion she saw mirrored in mine, but unfortunately, we couldn't exchange a single word. So, holding our breath, we watched a pair of feet in deerskin ankle boots pacing back and forth in the room, muttering to themselves, "No, not here either. Where on earth is it hidden? Me, bestie, just how many coveted treasures has Evan Shin hidden in this room?" And right at that moment, footsteps happened to sound from outside the room. So, the next second, my bestie, Arthur Han, and I were all squeezed under Evan Chen's narrow bed, staring intently as the person who entered from outside paced around the room, rummaging through drawers and cabinets. Arthur Hahn was the strategist under Rowan Wan from the beginning, the one competing with us for work. My bestie turned her head and glared at Arthur Hahn, communicating with her eyes. "What, have you switched sides too?" Arthur Hahn shook his head, replying with his eyes. "I'm here to find something for my lord." Just as my bestie was about to ask more, she suddenly heard another faint set of footsteps from outside. So, the next second, my bestie, Arthur Hahn, and Rowan Wan were all squeezed under Evan Chen's tiny bed, staring at each other in disbelief. I glanced at Rowan Wan beside me. Running into your former boss after a messy fallout was awkward enough, let alone under these circumstances. Rowan Wan's face was icy, his gaze sharp enough to kill. Can't blame him, really, given the scheme I'd pulled just that morning. Steeling myself, I shot him a questioning look. "So, what's the deal? Here to drag us back?" Rowan understood my silent message, nodding then shaking his head, replying with a gritted teeth glare. "I'm here to retrieve something, and yes, to haul you two back." Me. Why is everyone suddenly searching Evan Chen's room? What on earth is in here? Also, don't you and your subordinates ever communicate? Just as we were exchanging these wordless messages, I caught a movement in my peripheral vision. The pair of feet that had just entered seemed to have stopped right in front of the bed. I stared at the pair of jade, inlaid purple, gold boots frozen before the bed, nervously swallowing hard. Don't these look exactly like the shoes Evan Chen was wearing? When I blinked again, Evan Chen's handsome face appeared right before my eyes. Propping his head with one hand, he lay sideways on the floor, locking eyes with us. As expected of someone called my lord. Even in this position, he maintains such elegance. Evan Chen revealed a row of gleaming white teeth, smiling as he pointed at each of us in turn. Sleeping dragon, rising phoenix, crouching tiger, young unicorn. How fortunate I, Evan Chen, am to have 4 talents gathered in this humble room. As expected, the 4 of us were imprisoned. I shared a cell with Rowan Wan, while my best friend was confined with Arthur Hahn. I voiced strong objections to this arrangement. Why wasn't I locked up with my best friend? Evan Chen sat in his chair, took a sip of tea, and narrowed his eyes at me with leisurely composure, curling his lips into a smile. "Tell me, where have you hidden it?" I blinked twice, turning to Rowan Wan. "My lord, did you take his things?" I certainly didn't. Rowan Wan despised how I could shamelessly keep calling him my lord after betraying my former employer, his face darkening as he ignored me. Seeing this, Evan Chen chuckled lightly and said leisurely, "No matter, if you won't tell." With that, he stood up, grabbed me with one hand, pinched my chin with the other, yet smiled at Rowan Wan. There are only so many places to hide things on a person. Just 2, really. Should I search them right here? As he spoke, his hand slid onto my shoulder. "How dare you?" Rowan Wan roared, springing to his feet, the chains around him clanking violently. He glared fiercely at Evan Chen's hand on my shoulder, veins bulging at his temples. Evan Chen laughed heartily at his reaction, tightening his grip on me while taunting Rowan Wan. "This is my territory. Care to guess if I dare?" Rowan Ruan's face was terrifyingly dark, staring at him for a long moment before gritting his teeth and asking, "Speak, what will it take to spare her?" Haha, straight to the point. Evan Chen wore a smug expression, then drew the sidearm sword at his waist and tossed it at Rowan Ruan's feet. His phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, and the words he uttered sent a sudden chill down my spine. "Sever your own tendons, and I'll spare her life. Otherwise, I'll offer her as a reward to the 3 armies." Rowan Ruan stared at the sword at his feet, his expression shifting uncertainly, his thoughts unknown, anxious and fearing he might actually do something foolish. I blurted out to Evan Chen, I'll talk, all right?" I smuggled the item out. "It's not with me, but I can tell you where it's hidden." "You're lying." Evan Chen glanced at me and sneered. "From the moment I discovered you in the room to locking you up, You were under tight surveillance the entire time. Even if that thing had wings, it couldn't have flown out. What if I told you it did fly out? Right under everyone's noses, bold as brass. I looked at Evan Chun with an inscrutable smile. To my surprise, Evan Chun wasn't having any of it, merely stating indifferently, "So what?" He tugged on the chains, binding me, his face brimming with confidence. That thing's importance pales in comparison to Rowan Ruan, a leaderless mob. What can a bunch of rabble really do? Even if they get their hands on it? Evan Chun turned to me, raised an eyebrow, and said teasingly, "Honestly, I never expected you to steal under the guise of defecting, but it worked out perfectly, using you as bait to catch the big fish, Rowan Ruan." Then, he shifted his gaze to Rowan Ruan, his tone laced with sarcasm. "I also didn't think you'd actually risk your life for such a small fry, daring to venture deep into enemy territory with just one subordinate. Rowan Ruan, our Rowan Ruan, if this gets out, the whole world will laugh at your foolishness." Evan Chun sighed, shook his head, and placed his hand on my belt. "I'll count to 3. If you haven't severed your own tendons by then, I'll strip her clothes and search her myself." 1. As Evan Chun drew out his first syllable, Rowan Ruan slowly knelt and picked up the sidearm sword. "Don't." Watching from the side, I grew frantic and shouted at Evan Chun. My lord dared to venture deep into enemy territory alone. He must have arranged everything. Plus, I've already moved the supplies out. It's only a matter of time before our army breaches the gates. How can you waste time playing games here? I suggest you hurry to the city walls and see for yourself." Evan Chun ignored me, leisurely continuing his count. 2. Rowan Ruan gripped the sidearm sword, aimed it at his own ankle, and raised his hand. A gleam of excitement flashed in Evan Chun's eyes as he eagerly uttered the final number. 3. Rowan Ruan's hand came down like a blade. I couldn't bear to watch and shut my eyes. With a clang, the shackles on Rowan Ruan's ankles shattered instantly. Before Evan Chun could react, Rowan Ruan gave a fierce tug, snapping the iron chains on his wrists, and charged straight at Evan Chun's face, sidearm sword in hand. As a military man by training, Evan Chun reacted with lightning speed, swiftly retreating to dodge Rowan Ruan's lethal strike. Seizing the opportunity, Rowan Ruan grabbed my hand and pulled me behind him. Evan Chun stared in shock at the now freed Rowan Ruan, his face a mix of bewilderment and fury. But before he could figure out how Rowan Ruan had torn the chains apart, a panicked voice echoed from outside the door. "Report. My lord, a large enemy force has reached the city gates. What's there to panic about?" Fuming with rage and keeping a wary eye on Rowan Ruan, Evan Chun snapped impatiently at his subordinate outside. "Aren't they just a bunch of plague-ridden cripples? What threat could they pose? Engage them." However, the subordinate outside stammered in reply, My lord, the enemy's plague. It seems they've all recovered. They're now using catapults to hurl animal carcasses into our city." "What?" Evan Chun's eyes widened abruptly, his disbelieving gaze fixed on me behind Rowan Ruan, his expression shifting through a spectrum of emotions. I hid behind Rowan Ruan and stuck my tongue out at him. "I told you earlier, I've already moved the goods out, and my lord had everything arranged long ago. I even advised you to prepare early, but you didn't listen. Don't blame me." "Fine." Evan Chun glared at me, his face contorted with rage. Through gritted teeth, he snarled, "I don't know what sorcery you used to smuggle the plague's antidote out of the city, but do you really think you can escape?" With that, he roared and drew another gut, Ripper's sword from his waist, charging straight at us. My hand trembled in panic, and I hastily flung the remaining half bottle of corrosive acid, the one I'd used to melt Rowan Ruan's shackles, at him. Evan Chun instinctively blocked with his sword. Well, the gut, Ripper's sword was done for, so was one of his eyes. Seizing the chance, Rowan Ruan hoisted me over his shoulder and burst through the door. Evan Chun covered his eyes from behind while chasing, shouting furiously, "Shoot arrows, shoot them, don't let them escape alive." Rowan Ruan took off his coat, wrapped me tightly inside it, and held me close as he charged through the rain of arrows. Shielding me, with his body. I looked up at this man before me, about to marvel at how I hadn't chosen the wrong boss. When I heard Rowan Ruan grunt in pain, likely struck by an arrow, struggling, I peeked out from the coat and saw an arrow embedded in Rowan Ruan's left arm, blood steadily oozing from the wound. I wondered if it was a tetanus-coated blade. If so, we might as well start celebrating Rowan Ruan's birthday early. I glanced around. Archers were densely packed on all sides, and axemen guarded the city gate. Given the situation, we'd be turned into pincushions long before reaching the gate. Sighing, I said, "My lord, let me go." Rowan Ruan stayed silent, only tightening his embrace around me. I added, "My lord, you can't do this, using your subject as a human shield strapped to your chest." Rowan Ruan choked on his breath at my words, stumbling in his steps and nearly tripping on the spot, blocking with his sword to deflect the incoming arrows. He gritted his teeth and hissed at me, "Macy Leong, when we return, the first thing I'll do is sew your mouth shut." Just as I was about to retort, my peripheral vision caught an arrow shooting straight toward Rowan Ruan. Without a second thought, I threw myself firmly in front of him. A sickening thud followed as the arrow pierced deep into my back, crimson liquid quickly spreading across my robes. "Macy Leong," Rowan Ruan's panicked shout rang in my ears. I could feel the arms holding me tremble uncontrollably. Lifting my gaze to the man with red-rimmed eyes before me, my lips twitched as I forced out a sentence. "I told you not to use me as a chest plate, you damn fool." Before I lost consciousness, I vaguely saw my best friend riding Arthur Hahn, brandishing a spear smeared with shit, yellow liquid with such ferocity that she carved a fell path through the enemy ranks, shouting as she charged toward us. Looks like I really need to cut back on the absurd antics. Even my hallucinations are getting too intense. This sleep was unusually deep and peaceful. I dreamed again of the time when my best friend and I first crossed over into this world. Back then, we were nearly swallowed by this dog era of chaos. We cautiously avoided every pitfall, and finally, through deception and disguising ourselves as men, managed to infiltrate Rowan Ruan's army as strategists. Though our strategies were about as abstract as they could get, and our cunning paled in comparison to the ancients, with our limited knowledge, we were practically useless. So, it was common for other strategists to advise Rowan Ruan to just kick these two freeloaders out. But Rowan Ruan always laughed and said, feeding two more of us wouldn't cost much grain if he really drove us out. Given our frail frames, how many days could we possibly survive in this chaotic world? And so, we managed to linger on in Rowan Ruan's army. Although ancient food was far from tasty, my best friend and I, chewing on that dry, bland ration, often marveled at our luck for stumbling upon such a generous fool. If nothing went wrong, we could have just idled away our days in Rowan Ruan's army, living off his provisions without a care. But just when it seemed nothing would go wrong, something did. Someone poisoned Rowan Ruan's army. Nearly the entire camp was struck by the plague. My best friend and I watched the soldiers vomiting and suffering from diarrhea, utterly distraught. Was our meal ticket about to vanish just like that? As for who was behind it, we had a pretty good idea. So, my best friend and I instantly agreed to pretend to defect, actually stepping into the fray to steal the antidote for the plague. We knew that scoundrel Evan Chen had the antidote to the plague hidden away, which is why he dared to attack our troops so recklessly with it. So we decided to take action. On a dark and windy night, my best friend and I packed our bags and sneaked to the gates of Evan Chen's city. What happened next is as everyone knows. I found the antidote in Evan Chen's room, hid it on my person, and, while imprisoned, mixed it into dung balls when the guards weren't looking. Soon after, those dung balls were carried outside the city gates overnight by some diligent little insects. Just like that, the antidote was brazenly transported right under the guards' noses. To be fair, before we set out to steal the antidote, we did our homework, studying the local ecosystem, observing the inconspicuous dung pile outside Evan Chen's city gates, and corresponding with Rowan Ruan before daring to proceed. Otherwise, The soldiers outside the city wouldn't have been able to find the antidote in that pile of dung. I even factored in Evan Chen's arrogance. His arrogance made him certain that I couldn't possibly escape under tight surveillance. Even if I obtained the antidote, I'd never smuggle it out of the city. So he didn't rush to interrogate me that night, instead leisurely strolling over the next day when he had free time. This actually gave me ample time to ensure the soldiers received the antidote that very night to treat the plague. The one thing I hadn't anticipated was Rowan coming along as well. This only made Evan Shin even more arrogant. And now I had to share the corrosive acid I'd prepared for my best friend and me to escape with him too. I'd clearly told Rowan that I had an escape plan. If worst came to worst and we truly couldn't get away, then sacrificing us two good for nothings to save the entire army would be worth it. We might even earn a place in the history books. I slept extremely restlessly that night. Vaguely, I seemed to hear Rowan shouting frantically, "Where's the field medic? Get the field medic here." My best friend tried to interject nearby. My lord, actually, perhaps we might not need the field medic after all. Shut up. Rowan nearly lost his mind, roaring at her. She won't die. I never said she was going to die. My best friend couldn't take it anymore and yelled back at Rowan. Then I felt her hand slip into my clothes and pull out a blood pack. That was something I had prepared in advance. One for each of us, in case we needed to fake our deaths as a last resort. Instantly, the surroundings fell into a deathly silence. Just then, I drowsily opened my eyes from the bed, looking confusedly at everyone and posing a soul-searching question. "What's wrong with all of you? My lord, why are your eyes so red? And why is your face all wet?" Rowan looked at me, safe and sound, his face turning from pale to red, then from red to dark with fury. Lowering his voice, he gritted his teeth and growled at my best friend standing nearby. "Why didn't you remind me back then?" My bestie grinned sheepishly, scratching her head. "Usually, when the protagonist loses allies, they get buffs. I was afraid if I told you, you wouldn't get that bonus and we'd never escape. My lord, the way you held Macy Leong while cutting down enemies one by one was truly heroic. You absolutely went berserk." Rowan's facial muscles twitched violently before he turned to glare at me, demanding darkly, "And you? Why were you playing dead? Did you think fooling me was amusing?" I wasn't. I guiltily lower my head, mumbling, I was just exhausted from staying up all night, rolling dung balls, and couldn't stay awake. Rowan's expression shifted unpredictably before he finally took several deep breaths, muttered, "Fine," repeatedly, then turned and stormed off. Watching Rowan's retreating figure, I couldn't help but worry, will our long-term meal ticket be secure? For a long time after that, Rowan barely acknowledged me. Since Evan Shin lost an eye from my corrosive acid attack, his combat effectiveness plummeted, dragging down overall morale. Seizing the opportunity, Rowan captured several of Evan Chen's cities, driving him into retreat with victory within reach. Logically, this should be a good thing, but whenever Rowan discussed strategies with his strategists, my best friend and I try to speak up, only to be shut down by Arthur Hahn every time. He would say, "Please, take your seats. Matters are far from reaching that point." This left both my best friend and me utterly frustrated. My best friend grumbled to me privately, "In my opinion, that Arthur Hahn is just trying to steal our jobs." "Exactly, precisely." I nodded repeatedly, adding, "My lord has been neglecting us lately. It must be because he said something to him." My best friend clutched her head in panic. "If this continues, we'll lose our meal ticket for good." Hearing this, fury surged within me, and I rose to my feet, exclaiming, "Outrageous! There's no justice in this world. If he can badmouth us to my lord, there's no reason we can't do the same about him. Wait and see. I'm going to report him to my lord right now." With that, I strode straight toward Rowan's tent. Rowan appeared somewhat flustered by my sudden visit. Spotting the guilty, looking Arthur Hahn beside him, my anger flared further. I declared loudly to Rowan, "My lord, this subject has matters to report." Rowan looked at me, with slightly unnatural posture. His eyes lowered and ears faintly reddening as he said, "Actually, I too have something to discuss with you." How perfect. I glared viciously at Arthur Hahn nearby. In that case, my lord should have irrelevant persons leave at once. Rowan Juan waved his hand at Arthur Hahn, signaling him to depart. Seeing this, I couldn't help feeling rather pleased internally. See, my lord does care about me after all. He truly couldn't bear to lose an exceptional strategist like me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have risked his life charging into enemy lines to rescue me. This is what valuing talent looks like. Thinking this, I raised my head proudly and smiled at Rowan Juan. What matter does my lord wish to discuss with this subject? Rowan Juan looked at me, his face gradually flushing crimson. He lowered his head and hesitated for a long moment before finally gritting his teeth and speaking. "I wonder if your family still has any elders." His question left me utterly bewildered. I replied, "There are none left. I am the only one remaining in this world, with no other relatives. So that's how it is." Rowan's expression dimmed slightly, his gaze toward me now tinged with pity. He then continued, "In that case, you may make this decision yourself." He straightened his collar, adopting a solemn expression as he looked at me, and asked word by word, "Would you be willing to marry me as my wife?" Huh? My brain momentarily short-circuited. Rowan Juan continued with utmost seriousness, "Though I have not yet stabilized the realm, I wish to take you as my wife. I can invite clan elders as witnesses, perform the 6 rites of betrothal, and welcome you as Rowan Juan's lawful wife. If I someday unify the land and ascend the throne, you shall become the empress of the nation. Would you be willing?" My brain remained in a state of persistent malfunction. Wait, how did things develop to this point? I stared blankly at Rowan Juan and stammered, "My lord, I have no love for men." Rowan Juan looked back at me with equal confusion. Though unsure why I said it, he replied earnestly, "Neither do I." Now, even more bewildered, I exclaimed, "Then why do you still want to marry me?" Rowan Juan replied matter-of-factly, "A man marrying a woman is only natural. What's wrong with that?" I was stunned. "You knew I'm a woman? How?" A wry, almost amused expression crossed Rowan Juan's face as he looked at me and answered, "Probably because I'm neither deaf nor blind." His words struck me like a thunderbolt. "So, you knew from the start that we were women?" Rowan Juan looked even more amused. "Everyone knew." I shot to my feet, disbelief written all over my face. "Then, why did you still appoint us as strategists?" His gaze now held a touch of concern. "Why not? There's no rule saying women can't be strategists." Me. So our whole cross-dressing act was just for nothing? I looked at Rowan Juan, whose face at that moment clearly expressed one thought. How are you more feudal than me? An ancient person? My worldview was shattered. Seeing me on the verge of collapse, Rowan Juan looked concerned and tentatively asked, "If you're unwilling, wait a moment. Unorthodox strategies time and again." "Oh, okay." As if in a daze, I walked out the door and began searching for my best friend. I had to tell her that I might not be able to continue as a strategist. I might freaking become her boss's wife. After wandering around the camp, I finally found my best friend chasing Arthur Hahn with a stick, making him run all over the place. She shouted while chasing him, "You bastard. Every time we speak, you interrupt. Every single time. Speak up. What are you really plotting?" "Huh?" Arthur Hahn scurried away with his hands over his head, and upon seeing me, quickly sought help. "Stop fighting. Hold on a moment." I hurried over to stop my best friend, and before Arthur Hahn could cast a grateful look my way, I handed her an axe. "That won't kill anyone. This is how it's done." Despair flickered in Arthur Hahn's eyes. From then on, Rowan Juan's camp was in constant chaos. Either Arthur Hahn was being chased up the walls by his best friend, or my interrogations echoed from Rowan Juan's tent. Today's strategy was absolutely perfect. "My lord, why won't you use it?" Probably because I prefer not to be cursed for millennia. Also, shouldn't you change how you address me? Still calling me my lord? Well, I just remembered something urgent. I should go. Don't rush off. Why not discuss today's strategy further with your husband?